She was perfect for me in a way I didn't expect. Not perfect like the word gets used in movies or songs, where everything is flawless and easy. Perfect like alignment. Perfect like she understood the parts of me I didn't have to explain. Perfect like I could be quiet around her, and it didn't feel like failure. That kind of perfect is rare. And I didn't realize how rare until it was gone. I met her during a time when I wasn't looking for anyone. I was deep into something that consumed every available hour, launch timelines, production hell, problems stacking faster than solutions. My life wasn't designed for another person. It was optimized for output. And she wasn't supposed to fit into that. But she did. Not by changing herself. Not by demanding less. She just existed in a way that didn't require me to perform, and that's what made her dangerous. Because once you feel that kind of ease, you start depending on it without realizing it. We didn't have a dramatic beginning, no cinematic moment where everything aligned perfectly. It was quieter than that. Conversations that lasted longer than they needed to, silences that didn't feel empty, a rhythm that developed without effort. I remember thinking early on that this felt different, but I didn't let myself believe it mattered. I told myself it was timing, that if things were supposed to work, they would, that I didn't need to protect it, because real things survive on their own. That was the first mistake. Real things don't survive neglect. They survive intention. And I wasn't giving intention. I was giving presence when it was convenient, attention when I had margin, affection when I wasn't buried in something else. And for a while, that seemed like enough. She never complained, she never demanded more, she just stayed, and I mistook her patience for agreement. I thought her silence meant she was okay with how things were. I didn't realize silence was just her way of waiting for me to notice what I was doing. She understood the mission in a way most people didn't. She didn't resent the work. She didn't compete with it. She saw why it mattered, and that made it easier for me to keep choosing it. Because I didn't have to defend my priorities. I didn't have to justify why I disappeared for days into problems that most people couldn't comprehend. She got it, and I used that understanding as permission to keep putting her second. There were signs, small ones at first. The way she'd go quiet after I canceled plans last minute. The way she stopped asking when I'd be home. The way conversations became shorter, not because we had less to say, but because she stopped expecting me to be fully present when we talked. I noticed those shifts, but I didn't treat them as warnings. I treated them as adjustments. I told myself we were just finding a sustainable rhythm, that she was adapting to my reality, that this was what partnership looked like when the stakes were high. I was wrong. What I thought was adaptation was actually erosion, slow, quiet, invisible until it wasn't. She wasn't adjusting, she was disappearing. And I didn't see it until the night she finally said the words I'd been avoiding for months. We were sitting in the kind of silence that used to feel comfortable, but that night it felt different, heavier. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking past me, like she'd already made a decision and was just waiting for the right moment to say it out loud. And then she did. She said, "I don't think you have room for me." Not angry, not accusatory, just factual. Like she'd run the numbers and the equation didn't balance. I wanted to argue. I wanted to tell her that wasn't true, that I cared, that she mattered. But the words didn't come. Because somewhere deep down, I knew she was right. I didn't have room. Not real room. Not the kind of room that means prioritizing someone when it's inconvenient. Not the kind that means showing up even when the mission is screaming for attention. I had margin. I had moments. But I didn't have room. And she saw that before I did. She didn't ask me to choose. That's the part that hurt most. She didn't give me an ultimatum. She didn't demand I prove anything. She just quietly admitted that she couldn't keep existing in the margins of my life. that she deserved more than the leftover version of me that showed up when everything else was handled. And I couldn't argue with that. Because she did deserve more. I told her I'd change. I told her I'd find balance. I told her I'd make it work. But even as I said it, I could hear how hollow it sounded, because we both knew the truth. The mission wasn't something I could turn down. It wasn't a job I could deprioritize. It was the reason I existed. And asking me to choose her over the mission was like asking me to choose her over myself. I didn't know how to do that. I still don't. She left quietly. No dramatic scene, no anger, just a calm, painful clarity. She packed her things over a few days. We barely spoke. And then one morning, she was gone. And the apartment that used to feel like it had life in it suddenly felt like a structure, just walls and silence. I thought I'd be fine. I thought I'd adjust quickly, get back to work, refocus on what mattered. And I did, for about a week. Then the absence started settling in, not loudly, quietly. In the mornings when I'd reach for my phone and realize there was no message waiting. In the evenings when I'd finish a long day and have no one to decompress with. In the moments when something would happen, good or bad, and my first instinct was to tell her, and then I'd remember I couldn't. That's when I started understanding what I'd lost. I'd lost the only person who made the mission feel sustainable. The only person who reminded me that I was human, not just a function. The only person who saw the cost of what I was doing and stayed anyway, not because she didn't notice, but because she believed I was worth it. And I threw that away. Not intentionally, not maliciously, but through 1,000 small choices that all said the same thing. The mission comes first. I kept working, I kept building, I kept moving forward, because that's what I do. But something fundamental had shifted. The work didn't feel the same. It still mattered. It still consumed me. But it no longer felt justified. Before, I could tell myself that the sacrifice was necessary, that the cost was worth it, that saving humanity required this level of focus. But now, sitting alone in rooms that used to have warmth, I started questioning that narrative. What's the point of saving humanity if you destroy your own humanity in the process? That question stayed with me. It still does. Because I realized something I'd been avoiding for years. The mission gave me purpose. But she gave me life. And I chose purpose over life. I chose the abstract over the immediate. I chose the future over the present. And now I'm living in a future that's missing the one thing that made any of it feel real. I don't blame her. I can't. She didn't leave because she stopped caring. She left because I stopped showing up. And showing up isn't about physical presence. It's about emotional availability. It's about making someone feel like they matter as much as the mission. And I never did that. I thought caring was enough. It wasn't. People ask me now if I regret it, if I'd go back and choose differently. And the honest answer is, I don't know. Because choosing her would have meant compromising the mission. And I don't know if I'm capable of that. The mission isn't optional for me. It's not something I can set aside when life gets complicated. It's the reason I wake up. It's the lens through which I see everything. And I don't know how to exist without it. But I also know this: losing her changed me. Not in ways people can see, but in ways I feel every day. I'm more aware now of what I'm sacrificing. I'm more honest about the cost. I don't lie to myself anymore and call it balance. I know what I'm choosing, and I know what I'm losing by choosing it. She was perfect for me because she didn't try to compete with the mission. She just wanted to coexist with it, and I couldn't even give her that. I couldn't make space. I couldn't slow down. I couldn't prioritize presence over progress, and that failure, that inability to do the one thing that would have kept her, is something I carry now. Not as guilt, as knowledge. Knowledge that some things can't be recovered. That some doors, once closed, don't reopen. That some people only come into your life once, and if you don't hold on to them, they're gone. And no amount of success, no amount of achievement, no amount of world-changing impact will fill the space they leave behind. I still think about her, not obsessively, not desperately, but honestly. I think about the mornings we used to have, the conversations that felt effortless, the way she'd look at me when I was spiraling, and somehow ground me without saying anything. I think about what life could have been if I'd chosen differently, if I'd built margin instead of momentum, if I'd protected the connection instead of assuming it would survive neglect. But I also think about what I would have had to sacrifice to keep her. And that's where the conflict lives, because the mission isn't negotiable for me. It's not something I can compromise on. And she knew that. That's why she left. Not because she didn't love me. Because she loved herself enough not to disappear. What I understand now is that some people are not meant to stay in your life forever. Not because they're not important, but because your path doesn't have room for passengers. And she wasn't a passenger. She was a partner. But I treated her like an accessory, something I could pick up when it was convenient and set down when it wasn't. And eventually, she stopped letting me do that. I lost her to the mission, not because the mission demanded it, because I chose it. Over and over, in 1,000 small moments where I could have leaned toward her and didn't, where I could have stayed present and left instead, where I could have said you matter more than this email, this call, this crisis, and didn't. And those moments added up. They compounded, and eventually, they became the reason she couldn't stay. So yeah, she was perfect for me. And I lost her. Not to fate, not to bad timing, not to circumstance. I lost her because I didn't protect what we had. I assumed it would survive on its own. I assumed caring was enough. I assumed she'd wait forever, and she didn't. She chose herself, and I can't blame her for that. What I carry forward now isn't regret. It's clarity. Clarity that the mission costs more than I used to admit. Clarity that success doesn't heal loneliness. Clarity that some losses teach you more than any win ever could. And clarity that if I ever meet someone like her again, I'll have to choose differently. Or accept that I'm not built for that kind of love. Right now, I don't know which one is true. But I know this. She deserved better than what I gave. And the fact that I can admit that now doesn't change anything. It just means I finally understand what I lost. And understanding doesn't bring people back. It just makes the absence clearer. She was perfect for me. And I lost her to the mission. That's the truth. And I live with it every day.